The doctor's words hit me like a freight train. 2 weeks, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer, spread everywhere. No treatment, no miracles, no second opinions that would change anything. I sat there in that sterile office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt my entire world collapse into those 14 days. My wife Sarah grabbed my hand so tight I thought she'd break my fingers. Our daughter Emily started crying before the doctor even finished talking. And me, I just felt numb, 58 years old, and suddenly I could count my remaining heartbeats. You know what the strangest part was? My first thought wasn't about dying. It was about my father. He passed when I was 23, and I never told him I forgave him for missing my childhood. He worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, and I resented him for not being at my baseball games. What an idiot I was. Now here I sat, about to leave my own family, and all I could think was how much time I'd wasted being angry at a man who sacrificed everything for me. The drive home was silent. Sarah kept glancing at me like I might disappear right there in the passenger seat. Emily sat in the back, probably texting her brother Michael, who was away at college. How do you tell your son he needs to come home because his dad is dying? How do you fit a lifetime of advice into a handful of days? That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through our house, touching everything like I was memorizing it. The crack in the kitchen tile from when I dropped a pan 15 years ago. The height marks on the doorframe tracking the kids' growth. The couch where Sarah and I had our first real fight as newlyweds. Every corner held a memory, and suddenly none of the bad ones mattered anymore. Only the good stuff remained. I found myself in my office, staring at my desk buried under work papers. I'd spent 30 years building a career in accounting, 30 years of spreadsheets and tax returns and client meetings, and for what? In 2 weeks, none of it would matter. My clients would find another accountant. My company would replace me. But my kids, they'd never get another father. I made a decision right there at 3 in the morning. I wasn't going to spend my last 2 weeks saying goodbye. I was going to spend them finally saying hello. Hello to the man I should have been. Hello to the father my kids deserved. Hello to the husband Sarah married before I got too busy climbing corporate ladders that led nowhere. The next morning, I called my boss and quit. No 2 weeks notice, no transition plan, just done. He sputtered about responsibilities and commitments, and I almost laughed. What was he going to do, fire me? I had the ultimate excuse for not showing up. Then I called Michael. He answered all groggy, probably hungover from some college party. I told him straight, no cushioning it, no building up to it. Son, I'm dying. I need you home. The silence on the other end lasted forever. Then I heard him crying, this big tough kid who played linebacker, just sobbing. He said he'd be on the next flight. Emily refused to go to school. She planted herself at the kitchen table and declared she wasn't leaving my side. Part of me wanted to argue to tell her education matters, but honestly, what lesson could any teacher give her that would matter more than these next 2 weeks? Sarah called her sister, called our friends, started building this support network around us, but I stopped her. I didn't want a parade of sad faces and casseroles. I didn't want people telling me I'd beat this or that miracles happen. I wanted something else entirely. I wanted truth. So I sat my family down and told them my plan. We were going to take these 2 weeks and live more honestly than we'd lived the previous 58 years. No more polite lies, no more avoiding hard conversations, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. We were going to say the things people usually say for funerals, except I'd actually get to hear them, and I was going to tell them everything I'd been too scared, or too proud, or too busy to say before. Sarah went first. She told me she'd been lonely for the past 10 years, that I'd become a ghost in my own house, always working, always stressed, always somewhere else, even when I was sitting right next to her. She said she'd planned to ask for marriage counseling a dozen times, but never found the courage. Hearing that broke something in me. I'd thought I was being a good husband by providing, by making sure she had everything she needed. But what she needed was me, and I'd been too blind to see it. Michael arrived that afternoon, eyes red and swollen. My son, my boy, walked through that door looking 10 years older than when he'd left for college 3 months ago. He hugged me and wouldn't let go, and I realized it had been years since we'd embraced like that. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped touching, stopped connecting. We'd become those men who shake hands and pat shoulders, but never really hold each other. That night I asked him about his life, really asked. Not the surface stuff about grades and classes, but the real questions. Was he happy? Did he have good friends? Had he fallen in love? Was there anything he was afraid of? He opened up in ways he never had before. Told me about his girlfriend Jessica, how he thought she might be the one, but he was scared to commit. Told me about his doubts about his major, how he was studying business because he thought that's what I wanted, but he really loved writing. Told me he'd struggled with anxiety his whole freshman year, but didn't want to worry us. Every word was a knife in my chest. How had I missed all of this? How had I been so focused on my own life that I'd completely overlooked his? I told him something then that I should have said years ago. I told him I was proud of him, not for his accomplishments, or his grades, or his future career, but just for being him, for being kind and funny and thoughtful, for being a better man at 19 than I was at 58. Emily was harder to reach. She'd built walls around herself, this tough exterior that kept everyone at arm's length. At 16, she was all attitude and eye rolls and slammed doors. But that night, she crawled into bed next to me like she was 6 years old again, and she whispered the thing she'd been carrying. She said she'd always felt like she disappointed me, that I wanted a son who'd take over my business dreams, and instead I got stuck with a daughter who wanted to be an artist. She said every time I asked about her future plans or her college applications, she heard judgment. She thought I was ashamed of her. I cried then, really cried, because she was right in the worst way. Not that I was ashamed, God no, but that I'd made her feel that way through my thoughtless questions and my constant pushing toward practical careers. I'd projected my own fears and regrets onto her, and in doing so, I'd made my brilliant, creative, amazing daughter feel like she wasn't enough. I pulled her close and told her the truth. That her art was extraordinary, that I'd been scared, not disappointed. Scared she'd struggle financially, scared she'd face rejection, scared she'd get hurt. But that fear was mine to carry, not hers. Her job was to be brave enough to chase her dreams, and my job should have been to support her, not to clip her wings with my worry. We spent the next few days differently than I'd spent any days before. We didn't do bucket list items or tourist attractions. We didn't take some big trip or chase adventures. Instead, we sat together, we talked, we listened, we uncovered years of misunderstandings and unspoken hurts and missed connections. Sarah told me about the affair she almost had 5 years ago with a coworker. Nothing physical happened, but she'd been emotionally involved, seeking from him the attention I wasn't giving her. Instead of rage, I felt gratitude. Gratitude that she was honest, that she'd chosen to stay, that we were having this conversation while I could still hear it. I told them my regrets. How I'd chosen work over Emily's dance recitals and Michael's football games. How I'd snapped at Sarah over small things when I was really just stressed about money. How I'd held grudges against my own parents for slights that didn't matter. How I'd wasted energy on impressing people whose opinions meant nothing. I told them about the dreams I'd abandoned, how I'd wanted to write a novel but convinced myself I didn't have talent, how I'd wanted to learn guitar but decided I was too old, how I'd wanted to volunteer at the homeless shelter but told myself I was too busy. Every dream deferred, every excuse made, every moment chosen poorly now felt like a betrayal of the life I could have lived. But here's what I learned in those conversations, in that raw honesty. It wasn't too late for them. My kids could still chase their dreams. Sarah could still find joy. They could learn from my mistakes without having to make them all themselves. That became my mission, not to be remembered as successful or accomplished, but to be remembered as the man who finally woke up and helped his family wake up too. On day 7, I felt it. The pain getting worse, the energy draining faster. My body was keeping its promise to shut down. But my spirit felt more alive than it had in decades. We'd laughed more in 1 week than in the previous year. We'd cried more too, but those tears meant something. They were real. That evening, I asked each of them to tell me their biggest dream, the one they'd been too scared to say out loud. Michael wanted to quit business school and study creative writing. Emily wanted to apply to art schools in New York, the competitive ones she thought she'd never get into. Sarah wanted to go back to school to become a therapist, something she'd considered before we had kids but abandoned. I made them promise to try, promise to be brave, promise not to let fear or practicality or other people's opinions stop them from becoming who they were meant to be. And I made myself a promise too. However many days I had left, I'd use them to show them what love looked like when you stripped away all the pretense and fear.